it's actually small compared to the public schools. So I just felt it would be good to put those figures out there to play a bit of devil's advocate as we make the case for. Thank you.
I don't know, but we have so many people flying around with different statistics. We heard, I think it was also last year emphatically that it was 18,900 private schools registered. That there were non-registered. So it's not 5,000. For example, I can tell you for a fact that, for example, NAPS Abuja has up to 5,000 members, right? There might be different grades in that. Even Lagos, we have different school associations and we also have people who there's a time, even the Ministry of Education sold out a directory that had over 3,000 to 5,000 schools that are private schools, and that was back in 2008, and of course the number has increased. Yes, so what we're saying is, I even had that copy back then. I had that copy, very comprehensive. But of course, schools would have shut down. Some schools would have come up. But the truth of the matter is this, and I'm excited that we're already having some conversation online. This might even be a good time to also say, I was planning to announce it, but we might need to also begin to have what we call a call-in opportunity for guests who probably have solutions or who want to counter some of the things we're saying. So someone like Ashimolo Ademuyiwa, you all know Ashimolo, he says there is a directorate of private education in the ministry. Now, if we follow the statistics that Titi, that you've said and that you've shared, now the statistics that you shared, if we were to go by it and we said that there are 5,000 private schools in Lagos, registered, yes, registered, which I believe it's not accurate, which is registered. Now, if we now say that we have over 12,000 unregistered, and we know that Lagos State itself has 1,700 public schools, so private schools still outnumbers the public schools, the registered one. Now, the ones that are not registered and they are private schools, I believe that there is a need for them to be also brought into the spectrum, because leaving them itself, it poses a challenge of even what the ministry is set up to do. And so, and they are actually taking care of, in a way, they're taking care of some numbers and some catchment areas that the public system or the public education system through the public school is still not doing, because a lot of children have to walk a considerable amount of distance before getting to schools. You understand? Which is why I think that it's not necessarily that we just have a private school ministry, but I want to, and I think I would like to hear RonkePosh's idea or concerns on this, because primarily, RonkePosh, please keep your video on. Primarily because there was a statement that was made in May, and that statement was that we are taking care of the public schools. That was by the ministry, that there are concerns of the public. That left a window of interpretation to say, you know what, if our concerns are public schools, then as a ministry, priority-wise, there is nothing like private school in our agenda. And private schools did not emerge and evolve in them on their own, especially the registered ones. So the 5,000 registered one is a directorate finding the best of expression, or should they have a ministry to grow their concerns? Because this industry is quite great. So RonkePosh, over to you quickly.
Okay, I don't know what the question is, and I don't know why I was also asked to put on my camera alone when Jude never puts it on. And safety tip is here and there. So I feel bullied. I feel bullied this morning.
Let's hear you.
You what? You said what?
The question for her. The question for her.
Okay, I said I wanted her to share our thoughts, right? RonkePosh, share your thoughts, especially we're talking about the need for the emergence of the Ministry of Private Schools. And the ministry in May mentioned something that they were not, they were focused more on the public school, especially when the pandemic situation began to cause schools to shut down. And that left room for interpretation. And the interpretation was more of, you know what, if we're saying as a ministry, which covers both public and private, what exactly should be the need for private schools being taken care of? So if I'm taking care of public schools and I'm saying that private schools, open interpretation, take care of yourself, what exactly should that be as private schools? We believe that Ministry of Private Schools is more or less now an emergence to take care of the concerns of that 5,000 or the more than 5,000, the registered and both the unregistered.
Okay, it's still quite convoluted for me. Maybe it's the morning or maybe I'm just being thick. So I don't really understand the question still. However, I'm as a private school stakeholder, I do not expect that the government should come and bail me out. If I live in another country, perhaps I would expect that. I like to be a realist. And in Nigeria, I said it yesterday, even Loma have not been paid. The people that are immediately working for the government, many of them have not been paid. So why should public organizations be waiting for the government? Now, I'm saying this specifically for Nigeria, for Lagos. Based on the situation right now, I'm not saying the situation right now is what it should be, but it is what it is. Let's just be realistic. We have government public officers that need to be paid and haven't been paid. We have state schools, public schools that need to be looked after, and there's no considerable intervention at the moment. Then private schools are waiting to be bailed out by the government. It's not realistic yet in Nigeria. And I keep saying in Nigeria because I know that other countries, I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine in where is she, Virginia or somewhere yesterday, and she was telling me that the government gave grants to businesses in the States. They are not going to give us grants, and you know, it's here and there, it's jotted here and there. We don't have a system that works in Nigeria. We are working towards it, but right now, let's just face it. If you are sitting down and waiting for government to bail you out as a school, I just believe that it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. They're not going to bail you out. You're going to have to, just like we are the government of our electricity, just like we are the government of our water, just like we are the government of many of us, even the roads that in front of our house, we can't get to our homes if we don't fix the roads. Just like we buy diesel and we do so many things that the government should be doing. With this private school, we need to be doing it right now, whatever we can, to ensure that it moves. That's why parents need to collaborate with schools to ensure that there's continuity. It's not a state of private schools. School owners have always been making so much money, like I've heard some people say, and now it's our turn to keep the money. And that's because it's a misplaced priority. Parents don't actually, some parents don't actually understand the value of education. The COVID-19 lockdown has proved that many parents don't value education. So they rather have their children at home as opposed to paying the school fees because they believe that it's high. So let's not wait for the government. Whatever you can do, you will do. Unfortunately, some people have already had to close down their schools. We don't want that situation to be that way, but it is what it is right now, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. Safety Chick, quickly, I would like you to share your thoughts on this, knowing fully well that you've worked with several organizations, Department of State, regulation bodies, especially when you're organizing your school safety summit. You've worked with the Safety Commission. And I'm sure that you've had some level of experience, you know, how working with them has contributed to the development of the things that you do, has also added value to that. So can you use that working relationship or working experience as a case study to look at the subject matter of today, that we're looking at the Ministry of Private Schools? Now, the Ministry of Private Schools, imagine if you were able to get so much support from a commission. Imagine there was a ministry that was set up with best of expression to take care of the concerns of standard, not just palliatives. We're not talking about the COVID-19 people asking for grant, because the concern of the ministry is wide, and is wide enough that we cannot afford the current blind spot to keep the schools out of the dark. We keep talking about competing in a global space. One of the ways we need to do that might be to explore how we can nurture deliberately private schools the best. So, Safety, could you just share with us?
Okay, so what about this? If we want it to be separated as a different ministry, that might be a very difficult buy in this time, because already Nigeria is grappling with a situation where we're saying there are too many functions that are decentralized, and they're trying to see how to bring all these different agencies and ministries together as opposed to duplicating several. What I would rather propose, or what should be looked into more, is ensuring that the particular unit, the particular department that caters to private school is made to be more functional. It's supported with as much resources as possible. Because if we want it to be separate, that might not happen. But if everything that is private is engaged in particular unit department, came in, then to some extent they are going to be met. We should remove waiting for things.
Okay, Safety Chick, it seems like you're having a network challenge. Let's talk to Odetola while we wait for that connection. Ebenezer Odetola, good morning. Are you there? Can you hear us? Okay, so good. I need to see your face. Yes. Okay, so good. Yeah. So we're talking about the Ministry of Private Schools, and I'm sure a lot of people are still finding it difficult to let the topic sink in, or they're struggling with it. The truth about it is, if you, as an educator, looking at the dreams that you have, working with private schools, being someone who also has his business concern, what would the world be like if we had a private school ministry? We had what does that spell for people who probably are doing things like you do, where you had desire to train educators and you want your training to be widely spread? What do you think is something that is a welcome development? Would you love that to be a thought to be explored? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm.
Okay, thank you. Let me just read some comments from our guest online. And apart from the greetings, thank you, Favor L. Idogun, for joining. Blessing Yakwe, thank you for joining. Carol Paulo, thank you for joining. Matthew, Ashimolo Ademuyiwa, thank you for joining. The excellent teacher, thank you for joining. Abigail Solomon, thank you for joining. Glory Garden Schools, Abeokuta, thank you for joining. Walking High with Heroes, thank you for joining. So, Glory Garden Schools, Abeokuta says, first, Ministry of Private Schools will be a duplication of an already existing arm of the Ministry of Education. All that is needed is to strengthen the arm. And then, okay, Carol saying good morning. Ronke say something. Okay, so basically that's that. So I'm going to ask Titi to wade in on this matter. Titi, I would like you to address the issue of what would be your scorecard in terms of consultative, the extent of consultation or consultative approach within the current ministry framework? And also, what would you consider as the drive to have a ministry of private schools? Do you think that it's just a mere duplication? What now happens, so to speak, if that happens? Will it mean that the Ministry of Private Schools is still taking care of public schools? Because I think there's a bit of distortion there. What would you say?
Thank you, Rotimi. I think I'll start by saying that, in Nigeria, we are battling a major issue, which is the cost of governance. So I wouldn't advocate for a ministry. I'll go with what, Glory School said is really more of how to strengthen it. We are being weighed down by the cost of government. You find out that once we pay out salaries and all that, there's barely enough to do anything. So I wouldn't want to add to it. I'll say instead, how do we strengthen it? How do we ensure that there's more consultation? In Nigeria, generally, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consultation in making a lot of things. With technology, I don't see why we can't make this consultation open. You know how people sign petitions online and say, you know what, I've had 3,000 signatures. So that's really how it should be. Consultation should be such that the date that those things are happening, it's announced, everybody knows what it is. You can also walk in, give your own thoughts. You can join a poll online. I think we need more of that. So all the stakeholders actually being taken into consideration. When I look at what's happening, it appears, I can't say, if you don't see the data behind it, I can't say categorically they're not carrying everyone along. But when I see the results, I'm worried, did they carry everybody along? Even, I was shocked when I heard that, a group of parents are insisting that schools open. So I'm wondering which group of parents are these? I'm a parent and I would not want my child to go and do exams under conditions that I know are not safe for them. Because remember that exams are not an end in themselves. They're really a means to an end. So you do exams because it's not the end. What you're trying to do is to get the next level. And if the exams cannot be taken, there are, alternatives for it. So look at what being said for IGCSE. If they can't take the exams, then they look at, alternatives. So I'm really more for how can we ensure that there's more consultation, because there's wisdom in bringing everybody and ensuring that all needs are met. So that's really where I feel that, I see that it's lacking. We need to have more people talking. We need to ensure that we are doing everything in the best interest of everyone, and it's in the best interest of the majority. It will never be something that everybody is happy with. But what government tries to do is the majority. And I know that private schools are suffering, but it's important that we also put a balance to this. In the end, the balance is with the majority, and the majority are in the public schools. But having said that, that doesn't mean that other minorities should not be taken into consideration. And in this case, private schools are in minority. So I feel it's really more of how to strengthen it. But remember that one of the disadvantages is the fact that a lot of private schools are not registered, and a lot of us are not doing things together, because there's power in a united voice. Look at what is happening with Black Lives Matter. It started with someone talking about it, and there was a kind of unity, and so everybody took it on. So that even companies that are not taking it on are being looked at and are being, stigmatized. So there's something about us to being a united voice. I think because the private haven't come together to be a more united, voice that are taking care of all the stakeholders. They're just, in my opinion, there are just too many private school associations, and I think we can do more if we come together and are one voice. Let's have a platform that creates a bit of unity, so that when we speak, our voice are heard. When we speak, our concerns are heard. But I will say no for the Ministry of Private Schools. Thank you.
So before I let you off, I'm coming to safety check. But before I let you off, in less than 60 seconds, Titi, being a consultant, being a vendor, I would like to bring two questions to you. Number one is, are we saying that if, from what you said, that the only way you could have a Ministry of Private Schools is to set it up as a structure of what exists now? And is it that Ministry of Private Schools cannot come in terms of functionality as opposed to brick and mortar? So where then is the innovation and creativity? Since that everybody just wants to hold on to what we have and status quo, where the cheese is moving, and we're not even asking who moved my cheese. So we seem to be comfortable with now, and we're praying that we'll strengthen the arm. For how many years? 30 years, 40 years do we need to strengthen the arm? Are we playing politics, or are we being direct and pungent about this matter? Please, in 60 seconds.
Rotimi, once human beings are involved, there's politics involved. So what I would say is, how do we make it more open? How do we make it more transparent? How do we leverage on technology to do that? So we already have some bodies, that are, like we all said, we know that NAPS is there. So mine is, how do we make it more transparent? How do we empower? And how do we make it more inclusive, so that, everybody's voice, so to speak, can be heard?
I like that, and that was very short and brief. So safety check, I heard you were saying something just before the network went off. So do you want to just share from your practical point of view how you've been experiencing partnerships and what you think can move on from that?
So this is what I think about different agencies and organizations in government. If we want to create a separate ministry, it's going to seem like a duplication of function. And so because we do not want a duplication of function, what is really important at this time is to strengthen what exists. And since we already know that NAPS has been doing a great job, the department or unit in charge of private schools within the ministry must work really closely with NAPS to ensure that things work. And you see, what would make things work is actually putting the right systems in place. It's not enough for us to just say strengthen the system. It's about putting systems that would ensure that strengthening happens. So, for example, the education quality assurance thing happening here in Lagos, it's because someone decided that we need to take this a step further, and practical steps were put in place, and today we can all see the difference. So I would rather that instead of a separate ministry, what exists must be strengthened, and then organizations working from the outside who are doing an amazing job must be allowed to work together with them. They must be supported at all levels. As a matter of fact, they should work hand in hand, because they are bringing the perspectives from outside. Because you see, most times when things are happening within the government, if the right people who are at the front lines are not involved, there will be a disconnect. It's just like saying, our curriculum has an aspect that talks about safety education. And I can tell you categorically that I've been to different kinds of schools in this country. And for some children, it was when they saw me or heard through my volunteers that they were hearing about safety for the first time. So that means there's a disconnect from the top to the bottom. So that's the same thing here. You must ensure that we strengthen what works, and that what is currently available must work with frontliners like the different associations. And again, when we're talking about associations need to come together. You see, many times people want their own association to be the one at the front and another one at the back. They want their own names to be at the front line. It shouldn't be. Collaboration is really going to help us achieve so much more, most especially at this time. So I think we really need to lose that thing of wanting to only be the one that our names are at the front and we're the ones moving it and others are not. I think if we all have healthy self-esteem, we would understand that we are all great, we're all important in our own right. And so working together with others does not dim our shine. If nothing else, it pushes our agenda forward. And so that's what I think about it.
Thank you so much. So we'd like to also thank some additional people who've joined us online. We'd like to thank Carol. We'd like to thank Okenfa Ajayi and others who are joining as well. And thank you for your comments and those who are watching across the world. This is the Good Morning Education Show. And today we are speaking on the topic of the Ministry of Private Schools. And as I would like to bring another round of questions, I would like to bring Mr. Jude on board to answer this question. So It seems like we're getting a little bit confused, Mr. Jude, as to saying when we say ministry, probably also a lot of us need to be schooled when we talk about ministry. So ministry is not necessarily we saying that we want a Ministry of Education, but this time around don't deal with public schools, deal with private schools. The setup of the ministry and the DNA of what works in the ministry is quite vast. It's still the Ministry of Education. It's just like saying that you have a permanent secretary and you have a director, you have two permanent secretaries, or it's like you're saying you have two commissioners or whatever it is. So I want you, as Jude, you've been talking about the sector growing beyond the way we see it, not compared to past, not even compared with present, but retrospect to the future. We have countries, we have places like, for example, some countries have Minister of Happiness. Some countries have, let's say, for example, Kenya has a University of Fatherhood, not just University of Parenting, University of Fatherhood. When do we get to a point where we jettison what we have as a reference point from the past and look at the future? Because the future is content, the future is capital, the future is not something that we need to reduce to our current realities of what we struggle with. So I want you to talk from that perspective, Jude, as you look at the topic of today. You know, we've talked about this in behind the scenes, we've talked about what the future of education is. And if we're talking about AI, we're talking about those things. The truth about it is that if we're not even able to look at the possibility of flexibility in the structure of the regulatory framework of school system, then we are even seeing that the problem is not so much of rules or curriculum. The problem really resides in the system. So please share your thoughts on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rotimi. I've listened to everyone, and I think we all have our perspective to the topic. And I still hold that who decides the standard for schools? And if you say it's public sector that decide the standards for schools, what is the rating, or how do they rate it in terms of functionality, facility, and delivery? So for Ministry of Private Schools, it's not, people are thinking of it as the government will start funding some people or start funding some. It's more of an operational kind of ministry. It's more of an operational kind of ministry representing the interests and the progress of private schools with one voice. Now we have the government representing public schools with their own one voice, right? But private schools, we have different voices, and it's not a matter of them coming together, because we always say they should come together. But private school on their own, they have the way of categorizing themselves that we are better than this, we are better than this school. So that shows that they need one voice, in the sense that it might be represented as a ministry, not functionally, not funded by government, but by private pockets too. So when we talk about the private ministry, is to help private school chart a course for the future of this country. We can't be waiting for public schools to chart a course for our country, because the truth is that they are not even equipped enough to chart a course for our country. So when we try to represent our interests, we should look at interests that actually pushes our ideal educational plans ahead. So if we look at public schools, what are they bringing to the table that makes them forward thinking? Let's sit down and ask ourselves, what do public school bring that makes them forward thinking, and compare it to what private schools are bringing.
All right. Jude, can you? Okay, thank you so much for that. Very thoughtful point. I'm going to switch over to RonkePosh now, and I'm going to ask you, Ronke. So, being someone who is a voice in the space and being someone who is also involved directly with schools, what I would like to find out from you is, what would be that number one priority that you expect in the place of government or regulators working with the private school? What would be that number one priority they should focus on?
Okay.
Hello?
I think her mic.
Your mic?
What would be the number one priority of whom?
What would you advise should be the number one priority for regulators in terms of working with private schools or government or governance? What should be that number one priority?
At this time?
Yes, at this time.
There's a delay. It's a delay in the sound reaching me. Number one priority, I'm not sure what the...
At this time, yes, at this time.
What should be the number one priority at this time for regulators?
In your own, it's not, it's in your own.
Yeah, I understand
yes,
that.
In your own way, in your own words.
Well, there's a lot of corruption in the system. We just need to get things to work. That's all. A lot of it has to do with funding. And so if the corruption continues, the money can't reach a lot of people. We have the answers, we have the solution. And I even believe we have the money. If slums to school could collaborate with Microsoft and get 48 children online and have very, very sophisticated ICT systems, even better than many, if not even all the private schools that I've seen already, then it's very, very possible for us to get all our public school children online. Are we willing? So there's a mindset thing, there's a corruption thing, the value system erosion in the country. So the priority is just to implement. The solutions are there. Everywhere you go, there's a document floating around from one ministry, one association, from one place or the other, and there are reasonable, very robust solutions that are being proffered. So it's not like we don't have answers, but to implement, we need money. We even have people that want to do it, but to implement it's a whole different ball game in Nigeria. That's where the challenge is.
All right, thank you. Titi, please, I'd like to. Okay, Titi, what would you pick as the number one priority you counsel regulators to focus on in this period?
Okay.
Hello?
The voice. Okay, her mic.
Titi, your mic.
Hello. So sorry about that. And I was talking. So I want to start by saying that remember that when we talk about the father to many children, what that simply means that government is father to both the private and the public schools. So when we talk, I know we're all passionate about private school, but remember that it's father to many children. So you have 10 children, 7 of them are public, actually 8 of them are public, 2 of them are private. So they need to always take that into consideration. Yes, I know it's skewed more towards the 8, but they do have things also for the remaining 2. That having said that, I think what's paramount at this time continues to be the safety of everyone. When they look at any policies they are bringing out, they need to look at the safety of everyone, safety of the children, the teachers, and all the various stakeholders. The second thing I would say is that as they look at safety, they need to realize that anything that is implemented needs to be realistic and cost effective. So if you're not bringing money, you need to balance your requirements, which is why the option of schools continue to remain closed for me is really the way to go. But how do we continue to ensure that learning takes place? Learning takes place to various means, with available resources, without excessively planning to scale up at this time, which is really not the right time to scale up. So really, how do we continue to allow the children to continue to learn? Radio, TV, worksheets, online, whatever it is, let's just continue to ensure that the children are safe, the children are learning. And as much as possible, let learning not be a one way. Let's try to see how to supplement it so that two-way communication, two-way learning is happening, so to speak. I think that's really is what's paramount. And the last thing is that based on what we see now, how can they start planning for the,